So we'll just, Sean, leave a minute for people to log in.
I'll go on silent.
We'll start. Welcome everyone to Bio's wonderful Wednesday webinar. I feel like we have our a team meeting here because we are delighted to have Brigid Barry, who manages our Farming for Nature initiative, join us today. And along with her, we have Sean Farrell, who is a Farming for Nature ambassador, and they're going to give us a sneak peek into the newly published handbook. Even though it's 4,000 prints old now, that's how many prints have sold. They're going to tell us a little bit about this fantastic book and how the practical help that it offers can work in the field. So this book, as you may know, has been developed. It has developed from countless conversations with farmers, and is beautifully illustrated and offers practical advice on how to farm productively while protecting our natural environment. It's paced with accessible information and it's designed to help guide and inspire people who are interested in farming, regardless of their farm size, enterprise type, or starting point. And I think that's the really attractive part about the book. It would be of interest and relevance to nearly anyone and everyone who is passing interest in farming even. So really curious to hear what you both have to say today, Brigid and Sean. Thank you so much for joining us. And for any of you attending today have questions for either of them, please feel free to put them in the chat section or the Q&A section of your Zoom panel, and we'll take the questions afterwards. So fire ahead, Brigid, if whenever you're ready.
Brilliant. Thanks for inviting us, Pranjali. I'm just going to share my screen, if that's possible, so that I'll just give you a quick overview. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'll just give you a quick overview of Farming for Nature for those who don't know it, and then about the book briefly, and then Sean and I will just have a chat about how Farming for Nature works in the field. Sean's one of our farmers that we work with. So just very quickly, I coordinate the Farming for Nature project, as Pranjali was saying. This comes under the Bio Trust umbrella. I originally managed Bio Trust for 9 years, and then with the help of Brendan Dunford at the Trust, we co-founded Farming for Nature because we saw a need for this type of project out of the work we had been doing in the Burren together. So it was set up 7 years ago, really to change the narrative that was all too often in the media, that farmers and the environment were apart from each other, especially around all discussions around the biodiversity crisis and the climate change. But really, farmers are at the coalface of this and are definitely part of the environment. So we wanted to reframe that narrative by supporting farmers that are doing great stuff for nature across Ireland, but also, oh no, I hate when the presentations never work. Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry. But we wanted to reframe the narrative by supporting farmers that are doing great stuff for nature across Ireland, and then encourage others to do so too. So if we think about it, 70% of the land in Ireland is farmland, which means that the majority of our wildlife, our waters, our soils, and the food that is produced, obviously, is managed by farmers. And supporting and encouraging farmers that can carry out better practices for nature is crucial for us all in our future, and a better future for us all. So we felt about 7 years ago that there was few spokespersons for nature in the farming sector, and we wanted to change that. So where did we start? One of the places that we start was building up a network of farmers that are doing exemplary work, like Sean, for nature on their land, and getting their stories out there, but also building a network amongst these farmers. So over the 7 years, our network's now grown to 103 ambassadors. And whether you have 25 acres of horticulture in Kerry or 500 acres of tillage up in Kildare, we feel we actually have a farmer that is relatable to what you have on your land, and a farmer that is able to showcase what they're doing for nature, but also being productive across their farm. So furthermore, it was really interesting to hear from a lot of our farmers. By creating a network, it also created a bit of strength in their voices being heard collectively, that knowing that other people were doing similar stuff to them, either in the same county or the same farming system or just across the country. So as you can see here, here is the dots of our Farming for Nature ambassadors to date. So they really cover a wide range of across the country of different places. And at the moment, we're in the process of going shortlisting for our 2025 Farming for Nature Ambassador Awards. So we started with building up a network of farmers, but we also realized that a lot of the information that was available on how to bring nature back onto your farm was very, very scientific online and not very easy to digest. So we started building up a very comprehensive website. But nothing also beats going out onto a farm and seeing what the farmers are doing themselves and picking up tips and tricks from the farmers themselves. So here's Sean himself on his farm alongside his beautiful pond. And so we have a series of about 25 to 30 walks each year that other farmers can come on and pick up ideas of what they can do on their land. But of course, if you're a sheep farmer in Donegal, it's very hard to attend a farm walk down in County Kerry. So we also have a monthly Q&A session with our farmers, and these allow people to tune in and, like what Pranjali is doing here tonight, and tune in and hear from the farmer themselves. We've also developed a podcast series, and we have over 150 videos on our YouTube channel as well. We have a forum, we have newsletters, social media. So just ways of communicating to the farmers and finding new ways all the time of trying to get more people to engage with us. One thing that we started setting up about 3 years ago, because we saw a need, because people kept coming to us going, I really want someone to come on my land and give me advice. And so we set up the Horse's Mouth Mentorship Program. And what this is that we support our ambassadors to go out and visit a farm that's applied. And these ambassadors can then walk the land with the farmer and give them some tips, what they think would be an easy thing to do on their land for the farmers. But it's in a very kind of non-judgmental and safe space as well for the farmers. The other thing that we do alongside Burn BO is we support Action for Nature on a lot of our farms, so pond building and hedgerows and woodlands. And we also carry out a lot of events and conferences and stuff. But moving on to the subject of the evening is, well, there's a lot of information online, and we have a lot of information online. I think we have over 300 pages on our website. Nothing really beats a book in the hand, something that is on your shelf for life, something that is in our aim is to get it in every tractor and Jeep in the country. So at the end of last November, we launched the Farming for Nature handbook. This is a complete guide on what you can do on your land for nature. And whether you're a gardener who just likes to encourage more pollinated plants, or you're a farmer that's looking to decrease their inputs, or maybe you're just someone who's interested in nature and wants to be part of the debate about the biodiversity crisis and what people can do for nature around the place, then this book is a really easy to follow guide. And as Pranjali says, we've in the last 3 to 4 months, we've sold over 4,000 copies. It's self-distributed through our website and self-published by ourselves. So that's a great testament to the work that of putting it together. The main person who is the main author is Dr. Emma Hart, who is a biodiversity consultant and farmer down in County Cork. Emma spent about 18 months compiling a lot of the work. And it's a very easy to read guide, but the nice thing about it is everything that's in it is also backed up with science. So there's over about 500 academic papers in the bibliography. The book was largely edited and compiled by myself and also by Dr. Brendan Dunford of Burn BO Trust. So as you can see here, just to give you, if those of you who haven't seen it, just to give you a taste of what the book looks like, it's split into 12 chapters, and these are broken down by habitat. And under each chapter, as you can see up there on chapter 9, each chapter has 5 actions that you can take for this habitat. So in this particular case, it was peatland. And then under each of these 5 actions, you have a number of tips, up to about 10 tips. And it's very visual, as you can see. It's got lots of boxes, lots of different things. So it's a real book that you can just pick up over a cup of tea and flick through, or, you can read it from cover to cover as well. We worked with, on the left here, Clive Bright is one of our ambassadors, and happens to be a beautiful artist. So Clive did about 200 illustrations in the book. And also scientific illustrator William Helps did about another 90 illustrations as well, and graphics in the book. But the most important thing is we also had contributions from 50 farmers. So there's a lot of boxes, and this is literally from the horse's mouth, what they've done on their land for nature, how they're still a productive farmer, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And so while the narrative is scientific based, there's all these boxes of the farmers and what they've done sprinkled throughout the book, which is a really nice addition to the book. And Sean as well tonight has contributed to the book. I suppose nothing is worth doing unless you're making an impact and building audiences. So just to give you a quick graphic of Farming for Nature in general over the last, 7 years old. So our network, like I said, it's 104 ambassadors. We've carried out 121 farm walks with over 2,000 attendees. 122 farms have been visited by our mentors that I mentioned. We've carried out 66 online webinars. We have 43 podcasts, which are still listened to at least 1,000 times a month, even though we haven't brought out one in about a year. Like I said, we've sold 4,000 books. 58 ponds have been funded on our ambassadors' lands since 22. And actually, the graphics are over the last, my face is over the last graphic there, so I can't see it. And we've been building up our digital community through websites, social media, YouTube views, etc., etc. So all in all, just trying to continue to build impact. The ideal for Farming for Nature is that every farmer in Ireland knows about us, and every farmer in Ireland, whether they want to make small changes or large changes, they can on their land for nature. So how can you get involved as the audience? Well, buy the book. You can buy it on our website, which is at the bottom there, farmingfornature.ie. It's retailing at 30 euros online. If you buy more than 2, it's 25, and more than 4, it's 20 each. You can attend any of our free Ask the Farmer Q&A sessions. Again, this is found through our website. Sign up to our quarterly newsletter to find out about our events, like our farm walks and other things that we're doing. Follow us on any of the usual social media channels. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Spotify or iTunes channel as well for our podcasts and our videos. You can share any of the online resources we have with any farmers, so try and encourage the growth, and come to any of our events. Anyone's welcome. There's always an open door with everything that Farming for Nature does. I suppose it'd be rude of me not to mention our funders. So our main funders are the Department of Ag, the National Parks and Wildlife Service, which comes under the Department of Heritage, and also the Life's Too Good Foundation. And we're heavily supported by the team at Burn Bio Trust for our governance accounts and all other things like that. But moving on to the important part of the evening, my chat with Sean. Sean has been with us since the beginning. He was one of our first ambassadors, and he's got a really beautiful video on our YouTube channel if you get a chance to see it, and you'll see how beautiful his farm is. But I just want to give you a quick snapshot of some of the elements of his farm so that you can get the visual when Sean is talking. Sean has these most beautiful hedgerows, as you can see. I know if I was a cow, I'd love to be dancing around in that meadow, but he's got beautiful lush grass and hedgerows, an amazing horticultural garden. Some wonderful habitats for wildlife have been set aside, because Sean's got a massive interest in that. He's got various other kind of elements to his farm, like poultry and other things, and his fine herd of sucklers here, and just beautiful species-rich grasslands. Sean is a real testament to what you can achieve for Farming for Nature and still be a productive farmer. And Sean is an amazing educator as well to his peers and his colleagues. So Sean, I might just stop the share there, and then we can perhaps just have a quick chat about your farm when you're ready, if you want to unmute yourself there.
Thank you, Brigid, and hello, Pranjali. Thank you for the invite.
Thanks for joining us this evening. And as I mentioned, obviously you're part of the network of the Farming for Nature ambassadors. And before we get into that, you might just set the scene for us, Sean. What's your farming system and what does it look like now? We're in early March. What's going on your farm now for anyone that doesn't know it?
Yes, so the main enterprise, guys, is a suckler cow herd. The farm itself is 23 hectares or 60 acres, and a certain amount is taken up with nature. About 27% is space for nature. Um, there's just 14 suckler cows. I'm taking the offspring to weaning at 9 or 10 months of age and selling them on to another organic farmer, and he finishes them at beef. I keep some pigs for fattening, for pork, and during the summertime I keep broiler chickens. And as you mentioned, and as you see, I grow potatoes and veg and soft fruits and stuff like that. So, and as you mentioned, also I'm diversified into environmental education, do a little bit of social farming, and I actually work a little bit off the farm, and I help out in the university and project in university.
And for those who might not know, what is social farming, Sean?
Yeah, sorry. So social farming is, well, the farmer gets some training in supporting people in need in society. And the visitors to the farm could be maybe students, maybe with special needs, or there might be people coming from the mental health service. And they will come onto the farm and partake in suitable activities. It could be making bird boxes, it could be sowing acorns, or it could be doing a little bit of painting or whatever makes a good day for those visitors. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's enjoyable for everyone all
Yeah,
around.
absolutely.
So, how did you start? How did you start on your journey of farming? Did you grow up on this farm, Sean, or?
No, my parents were farmers, big family of farmers. So my parents had a workforce on hand. So we were introduced to farm labor from an early stage, and yeah. Then at the age of 21, myself and my father bought this farm, which is located about 3 miles from the home farm. And it was farmed conventionally for a number of years. My father was managing at that stage, and I was working off the farm, trying to make money to pay off the debt. Like, you know what I mean? And then I took over the farm. I continued to farm it conventionally for a few years, and
Mhm.
then I changed and went organic and so forth. Yeah. So
So, what encouraged you to kind of make that change towards farming for nature?
it was really a journey of education, really, because there was a couple of things that really kind of set me thinking. And one thing was one of the actions I did on the farm, which I often tell this story about putting out farmyard manure, not farmyard manure, but cattle slurry. And I put out a cattle slurry one evening, anyhow, and I got my contractor to do it. And I said, okay, put out about 3,000 gallons per acre on those fields there. And I went up the next day, then expecting that I had a great job done, and just to discover that I had so many dead earthworms on top of the ground in my field, and I knew this can't be right. Like, you know what I mean, um, that was one light bulb moment, you could say. Another thing I was noticing was if you were leaving a field and going out the gate, and by the gateposts I would notice some yarrow and some wild herbs and stuff like that, and I was kind of wondering why are they not out in the field, and my animals would be going looking for them, like, you know what I mean? So I wanted to try to encourage those back. And the third factor really was my farm in Tumivara is on the western slopes of the Devil's Bit Mountains. So the mountain streams going, or the rivers going down here, they don't have salmon and they don't have trout. And I thought for a long time, okay, they don't have salmon, they don't have trout, so they are only water and stones. But so then somebody introduced me to lifting the stone and showing me the mayfly, the stonefly, the freshwater shrimp, and all the other creatures there, and that interconnected web of life, and what emerges from the stream, and how that feeds the wider landscape. You know what I mean? Birds and bats and so on and so forth. So that's been a kind of my journey, and lots of other people influencing me along the way. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Brilliant.
There
And
you go.
can you tell the audience what you specifically do on your land for nature? How do you manage your hedgerows or your grasslands, or, what would make you different to maybe a conventional farmer down the road, for people who don't know?
Yeah, well, I'll have to say, with regard to hedgerows, I'm a very strong believer in letting them mature, let them up, let them flower, let them produce fruit. I I have something that bugs me to see hedgerows at little more than tabletop because there's no landing place for the birds and there's very little flowering and there's very little insects and there's very little buzz. So for me, hedgerows, I rarely have a hedge cutter on my farm. I leave them pretty much to themselves. Um, but what I'm looking for in a good hedgerow in my farm is trying to have good structural diversity. You know what I mean? Maybe a really high, big ash tree, and then and maybe lower down you'll have the white thorn tree, and lower down again maybe the firs, and you because you'll have different species using different levels like that. You'll have the song thrush in the morning, way up on the ash, and you'll have the blackbird maybe on the top of the white thorn, and the robin in the middle of the white thorn, and the wren down in the bank. You know what I mean? So structural diversity is very important, and then species diversity is also so important because the hedgerow not far from where I'm sitting here, the main hedgerow up along from the on the boundary field, is probably has about 17 different species of three species in it. So there will be flowering at different times of the year. So you'll have a continuous supply of nectar, and then you'll have a continuous supply of berries and fruit later in the season, and so on. So yeah, that's just really important about the hedgerows. And I suppose uh, it's recommended to have a kind of a wide base then also because it's better chance there's more space or there's more surface area to catch the sunshine, like you know what I mean, and you're going to have different levels of plants, like from the brambles and the honeysuckles down to the ground ivy and other primroses and different dog violets and different things like that as well, like you know what I mean. So
Brilliant.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so your hedgerows sound gorgeous, and I can't imagine the dawn course at the moment. It must be absolutely yelling it out from your hedgerows. Come here, Sean, tell me about your grasslands. What have you done for nature, specifically on your grasslands, that might be different to a conventional farmer somewhere else in Tipperary?
Um, well, I'm not so much into reseeding. I did a little bit of reseeding about 19 years ago, 20 years ago, but I'm trying to move away from. I have moved away from reseeding, um, and I'm kind of hoping that the likes of the yarrow and the self heal and those herbs will come back into the sward themselves, and they are. And I will admit maybe slower than maybe I expected, but they're finding their way back into the sward. Um, so I'm not doing a huge amount, only rotational grazing of my sward. You know what I mean? And my animals won't come back onto the same sward for maybe 35 days. You know what I mean, of a rest period. Like you know what I mean. Of course, as an organic farmer, I'm not using any ivermectins or anything like that. So there's a good chance that hopefully the dung beetle population is improving on my farm, and that's hopefully helping to build the soil structure and carbon storage and those kind of things. Otherwise, for growing silage, I am using slurry, and I am using farmyard manure. Yeah, so I'm not buying any inputs for growing grass or
And are
anything.
your cattle housed in the winter? They're not, are they?
Yeah,
Are they?
they are
Are
indeed.
there?
Yeah, they are indeed. The nature of my land, is that it's good for growing rushes for St. Bridget's Day, but as well, so that can be a bit of a challenge. So I do need to put them in the winter time. Absolutely, yeah,
And we
absolutely.
saw that beautiful
Yeah.
pond in the picture in one of the photos I showed. And tell me, Sean, is there much? There's a lot of natural kind of wetland, I suppose, in your area. But did you actually physically dig some ponds as well?
Yes, that pond that you showed in that picture was the first pond dug on the farm about 10 years ago. It was at the base of a hill with a little bit of a natural spring coming from the base of that hill. And without damaging any habitat, we felt it was a good location for a pond. But we also felt that maybe there's not enough of an inflow of fresh water. So we actually bought a 4-inch pipe from the nearby stream into the upper pond, and it would flow through those three ponds and then back into the river again. So that's the system there. And then 2 years ago, we put in another pond on the farm, and there's plans to put in more. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Great, excellent. So, I mean, you're giving over a lot of land to nature. Do you find this decreases your productivity as a farmer, or how has it worked in line with your business, Sean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose in a way I find I feel a bit of an obligation to try to reverse the trends, the trends with the birds and the trends with the insects and the trends with flowers and butterflies and all these things. So I feel a bit of an obligation to try to halt that decline. And yeah, even the book gives some lovely, it's the book for me causes some mixed emotions to a certain extent because there's wonderful advice and wisdom coming from farmers who have tried and tested different things. But there's also data coming about native plant species, and there's data about the decline of the hedgehogs, and do you know what I mean? And farmland birds and stuff. So that's not nice reading, to be honest. But so
Mm.
what can I do to change that is another thing that I want to do. Um, but fitting that in with my farming system, interesting. Thing in 2024 for the first year I started to cut some willow and use willow as a kind of a tree fodder for my animals, and so I think it's very beneficial for my cows because they come to me immediately looking for this willow because they know there's tannins in the willow that will hopefully help to clean out any worms and stuff that are in their body, like, you know what I mean. So there's little learnings happening all the time, and some of those learnings are coming from Farming for Nature ambassadors that I'm meeting in the network. Like, you know what I mean? And so that's another really good value. And it's fulfilling for me to make those learnings as well. Like, you know what I mean? So
Which is leads me on to my next question. Do you enjoy being part of the Farming for Nature network, and what does it mean to you to be part of the network?
sure. You get when you meet up some of the members of the 104 people, you meet up with them. You're immediately getting energy. No, honest to God, yeah, you're getting energy, and you have that commonality of mission or whatever it is, and that's inspiring in itself, like, you know what I mean. So, and I
And
think
you've
it's
been,
I think it's
oh,
good,
sorry.
right? Yeah, well, I think it's good to be open to these new learnings and share. Peer to peer is very important for farmers, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and talking of which, you're part of our mentorship program. So you might just explain to people who don't know about the Horse's Mouth mentorship program, what it is, what do you do, and how it works, do you think, in the long term?
Yeah, I have visited a couple of farms. I visited in Cork and Limerick and Laois and places like that. But I have to say, I've been going onto those farms and you know, looking at the resources they have and maybe making some suggestions. But I'd have to say that I've been pretty much refreshed by the enthusiasm of those farmers for improving their habitats on their farm, but also the activities that they have already undertaken. Like, so they're already quite a bit on the journey themselves. That's what I have found. Like, you know what I mean? So that's been refreshing for me, and I've learned quite a bit from them. Like, you know what I mean? So that's my experience of the whole program, which I think is excellent.
So just for people who don't know, Sean goes out, people apply, Sean would go out on a day, like visit the farm, walk the farm with the farmer, and then you'd write a list of recommendations as you would see fit that would suit that farm. And then we would send them to the farmer with some resources and stuff like that from our website and hopefully kickstart them further on their journey. Sean, do you find more of your farming peers are coming on board with kind of the type of farming you're doing, or do you still is it quite uphill battle when you're over the farm gate chatting to your neighbours?
Uh, no, I don't. I see very little shift locally.
Mm.
I see very little shift locally, in all honesty. But I still try to set them thinking a little bit by, small little tricks. You're going to need to have a few little tricks. Like, let's say, for example, there might be a sale of work happening in the local community, and it might be a good idea just to maybe bring along a few little trees for transplanting so that people can think differently about, cutting down these trees for a sale of work. Maybe we need to plant a few trees, you know what I mean? So you can be strategic without shoving your opinion down their throat. Like, you know what I mean? So that's the kind of approach I use. Or even if I have visitors on the farm, maybe offer them some. I think what's a lovely thing to offer them is, let's say, so for example, blackcurrant cuttings that you have potted up. You know what I mean? And they can take home the soft fruit and or take home the berries for take home the plants for berries and for pollinators and for birds and so on. So just little tricks.
Nice,
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, yeah.
So, Sean, overall, do you think the handbook is a useful tool for people? What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. It's beautiful because I really love I love the great prompts and great ideas coming from the farmers, like, you know what I mean, from their learned experience, like, you know what I mean, what they have, what has worked for them, and yes, new ideas that I never heard of before, like using beetle banks and stuff in tillage ground. I'm not a tillage farmer, but you know what I mean. I've never knew of that, like, you know what I mean. So there's lots of learnings in the book, like, you know what I mean.
And I think
Absolutely.
that's the interesting thing about Ireland and about the book is when we embarked on it, you have so many different farming systems
Yeah,
and different types of livestock, and then you also have so many different land types. So being a farmer up in the Mayo Hills is very different from being a farmer in Wexford. So trying to incorporate all that into a book was challenging, but
yeah,
actually really vital because, like you say, you learn tips from different farmers and their different land types that
absolutely.
might be applicable to your own.
Yeah,
Um, so, uh, so do you find it's given you a few insights anyway, basically into the work
definitely.
that you do and kind of helping spread the word through education? I wonder, does
Yeah.
anyone have any questions in the crowd, Beef
Yeah,
or
I mean,
Friendly?
anyone who's listening, please feel free to put in any questions to Sean or Bridget, but I might start off with a couple that I have. I imagine that your horse's mouth program fed into the book. Bridget, did it? Did you look at all the recommendations farmers were making and, zeroed in on the ones that were recurring all the time? Do you have examples of ones that like a recurring theme or questions that new farmers had most often, for example?
I think it kind of goes even a step before the mentorship program. We actually had on our website, we had split up the website into what you can do by season, by land type, and by farming system. So, we had the tips and tricks there, but we also then got many of our farmers to write a piece. It was called Ground Tips. So they would write about something that they were really knowledgeable about, whether it was dung beetles or whether it was, bats or it was birds or, whatever they had done on their land. So that was a really useful kind of content as a background. And then we kind of found through the mentorship program, people were kind of asking a lot of the same questions. Where do I start? What are the quick, easy wins, I suppose, for nature on my land? And these would often be a guide then for people like Sean to go out and kind of see are they, applicable on the land. So whether it's, putting in a pond is a great way of getting nature back automatically, enhancing your hedgerows, planting in an awkward kind of corner of a field. So your house corner concept that you guys run, and obviously decreasing with your fertilizers, all that. So I think there was kind of easy wins there in terms of the actual mentorship program. Yeah, it was really interesting what the mentors are writing to the each of the farmers, and I think each mentor comes with their own you know area of interest as well. So that's really interesting to see. And what I think what's nice for the mentee and the feedback we get from the mentee is that when a fellow farmer comes onto their land, they're not going to be the complete ecologist and tell you everything about your land. It's just walking with another peer who might be able to point out a few tips, and hopefully in a non-judgmental way, which unlike if you perhaps had a professional visiting your land, you might feel a bit more judged. So I think it's just the mentorship program is just a really nice peer-to-peer because it's quite equal in its encouragement. Sean, would you have anything to add there, do you think?
I think you summed up the really well, but I certainly think that the farmer is very comfortable with another farmer, like, you know what I mean, and because it's easy to share stories, and that person might have, what I mean, questions about what have I been doing in my farm, and so it's very easy to have a relaxed sharing of knowledge. You know what I mean? I think it's a sharing of knowledge from my experience has been a big part of it, rather than I being a higher level of expert than anybody else. I've found the level of knowledge out there with the people I went to was very keen. Like, you know what I mean?
And was there a particular area that you brought, a particular, aspect of your farm or your experience that you found useful in sharing with the people you visited?
Yeah, well, yes, I actually do like talking about hedgerows, to be honest. And you know what, what has become a passion for me also, because of my ignorance for a long time, is the whole area of freshwater ecology. You know, so um, and if you have ever seen, and I know that I'm going to touch on the case caddis because it's something that always gets my heart beating. Is that it is the the eco design of the life cycle of that creature. Like, and if you can share that little story with another person, that this little insect takes tiny little stones from the bottom of a stream and secretes a glue to glue those stones together, and then hooks itself into this little stone house as a mobile home, you know, and then emerges as a flying insect. You know, it's quite a. I think that it's an impactful little story, like, you know what I mean. So, anyhow, just to answer that question, that hedgerows, and another little thing that I find also, that's something that I'm kind of trying to learn more on, is using trees for water management on a farm. Especially, I've touched on the fact that rushes grow quite well on my farm, and if I can intercept water with trees. You know, I might be saying to another farmer that has a similar story in parts of Limerick or wherever, that, well, you know what, I've been trying that. Now it might be worth there if we look, you know what I mean, intercepting water coming from there with trees and stuff, like, you know what I mean, and create a habitat at the same time, like, you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
very interesting. Yeah. And I
yeah.
wonder, I know Bridget already asked you about productivity. And I was wondering, do you think it's extra work farming for nature? You know, leaving these areas for nature. Do you see it as additional work compared to if you didn't do any of that?
Oh, without a doubt, it is additional work. But I think there's great joy in taking out the trees and planting trees too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's the fulfillment now, but I also look forward to the fulfillment in a decade or decades to come, hopefully. Like, you know what I mean? So
No, and it's an
that's
incredible legacy
that's
because you're, you
that's
know,
the winning part. Yeah,
bec
absolutely. Yeah,
because you're sowing seeds for the future. So
yeah, absolutely.
that's int and I'm trying to visualize your farm. Do you have areas of your farm that are very intensively farmed and other areas that are not? Or is the overall farm kind of extensive and low input, if you like?
Well, yes, as an organic farm, it is, yes, pretty much low input. And to be honest, to answer that too, Jerry, I might say that since 2012, and we had a seriously wet year in 2012, I needed to consider climate change and how I was managing my farm. So since then, I actually dropped my stocking numbers. You know what I mean? And hopefully, I'm putting less demand on the soil and less demand on the system, and trying to build up the system, to build that little bit of resilience to 2012, to build the resilience to 2018, which was an extremely dry year, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So hopefully I can build the soil carbon, build the water infiltration, build the water holding capacity, and build the shelter and all these things as I go along, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that
Yeah.
answer. And I suppose this question is probably for both for you and Bridget. Many people are confused between organic farming and farming for nature. How do they relate to each other? Do you recommend that all farming for nature, people who you meet that they go organic, and is that enough for nature?
I'll start, Sean, and then you can take on. So within farming for nature, we have a huge spectrum of farmers that are involved in what we do. So whether it's people that are just starting out in their journey of including more nature on their land, or it's people that are really far down the journey and have very thriving habitats. Uh, by all means, they don't have to be organic. They just have to be lowering their inputs and increasing, their soil fertility, cleaner waters, increasing their habitats for wildlife. And a lot of our farmers, I think it's only 40% though, 40% of our farmers are certified organic. So that's 60% of our farmers aren't organic. But also, while there's a lot of really good organic farmers that are doing amazing work for nature, there's also very intensive organic farmers that leave no nature on their land. So being organic doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for wildlife and for biodiversity. It of course helps because you're lowering your inputs and stuff, but it just depends on your end goal. So we wouldn't declare it as necessary. But we're declaring that you have to do what you can for nature, and automatically by decreasing your inputs, your chemical inputs, I'm talking about, you're already increasing, the insect life, therefore the bird life, therefore, the ecosystem is going to improve by decreasing your inputs. But whether you're certified organic or not is up to the farmer. Sean, you may or may not have a different opinion on that, but what do you think?
I'm inclined to think that from my opinion, let me see that maybe the organic farmers tend to have a closer connection with nature because they're depending on nature to grow their resources. And I'm inclined to think that the organic farmer is maybe more connected with soil and soil science and trying to build soil organic matter. And soil is, I think, the foundation for many parts of the ecological system. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that the organic farmer probably has a better connection with soil, if I can use that as my way to say that they possibly are working more towards enhancing nature than,
Yeah, and then they
if
might they
that's being
might
fair.
they might be on that journey to recognize and that the other habitats that are needed on the farm are not just the lack of chemicals, but there are other aspects to farming for nature. Because I think there's a general, I suppose, a lot of people think if you're an organic farmer, that's enough, but we know now that that's not the same as having a biodiverse farm necessarily, just because you don't have any chemical input. So that's and I know this is probably going into a completely different thing. Do you see it as a way forward in terms of making farming more viable if people join the organic scheme? And, does that make it financially viable to move away from conventional farming?
Sean, I'll let you answer that.
Sorry, yes. That's a good question because there's no guarantee, I believe. I only heard that yesterday. There's no guarantee that there will be government funding for organic farming in the next program, or yeah, in the current once this scheme. Let me see now. Once this, I think it's once this current funding regime is finished, that there may be no guarantee that there will be funding there for organic. So that would be a huge blow to the system because you know what I mean. If you're getting 250 euros a hectare, and to lose that would be a big loss to the system, like. But throw the question to me again there, Fangeli. Throw me the question again, please.
Oh no, I was just thinking, like, if there's a conventional farmer who wants to do better for nature, and if they
Yes.
become organic farmers, is that giving them an incentive, financial incentive, that is big enough to move away from what they would have been doing before that?
Well, yes, I think many of the farmers contributing to the Farming for Nature handbook speak about the reducing input costs and how they have made our system much more optimal was the word that was used. Optimal rather than maximum. Like
Yeah.
I liked that. That was the phrase that was used by some of the contributors. They optimize production rather than maximizing. You know what I mean? So there was a nature benefit as well as economic benefit. You know what I mean? So that was a nice
And
summary
possibly
of.
better economic benefit in the long term,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if it's not maximum in the short term. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And so other contributors are saying that they get a better work-life balance and so on. So
yeah,
these are important factors also.
So
absolutely.
apparently, what a lot of our farmers say is that when they start decreasing their chemical input, so one farmer was saying to me they were putting in 100 grand a year onto their land, and then unfortunately the war in Ukraine happened. So what was 100 grand was going to come 220 grand euros, and they couldn't afford that. So they started decreasing their inputs, their fertilizers, their chemicals, their herbicides, etc.,
Yeah,
etc., and their yield goes down. So your productivity goes down because you're not
yeah,
kind of putting
yeah.
the inputs in. So, but what they found is over 2 to 3 years, their profit margins were actually either balancing out or increasing. So everyone has a different starting point. So some people inherit land, some people are tied to the banks with their lands, so it's really hard to kind of, every farm is different in terms of where their profit margins exist. But in terms of their yield, as Sean said, their yield might come down, but actually they're optimizing on. And what has also happened, this particular farmer I was speaking to is saying what's really nice is he's now controlling what's inside his gates, as opposed to being controlled by a global market. So if he wants to optimize what's inside his gates, it's up to him. So through farmyard manure or, whatever, like biological amendments he's putting on his land, it's more about the biology than the chemistry. And I think a lot of people that got interested in soil and regenerative farming, which is largely about soil as well, it's about looking at the biology and increasing the biology of the soil. But as Sean says, by increasing the biology of soil, automatically a lot more happens for nature above the ground. Sean, I see here a question from Niamh Lennon. Has your productivity improved or disimproved on your farm as time goes on?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I have been monitoring. Let's say each year when I sell my weanlings from my cows, maybe let's say in December, and they are weighed and sold on to my and the organic farmer who takes them to beef. And to be honest, I could show you my journal showing that the weight of the weanlings is incrementally going up. And so I am hoping that I am gradually improving the soil. And as I mentioned earlier, even introducing a little bit of tree fodder, that I am using strategies to build the immunity and build the growth rate and build the soil and so on. So and maybe making a few little changes like at the moment, for example, when I'm feeding my cows now in the springtime and we're in the month of March, and you mentioned that maybe in a question earlier. I'm giving a small little bit of organic seaweed into the combi crop feed that I give to my cows at the moment, and I feel that will hopefully give my calves an extra good start in the year, and that they'll hopefully finish with a better weight again at the end of the year. So you know what I mean? I'm hopefully learning and trying new strategies, and at the same time improving my bottom line. Yeah.
Actually, last time I saw you, Sean, in person, I think it was up at the Winterage weekend in the Burn,
Yeah.
and you had been busy early that morning because you were by the coast filling your van up with seaweed,
Correct.
so that you had for the cattle for the winter.
Correct.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Apparently, do you have any more questions or?
There don't seem to be any coming in. I suppose I'll throw my last question in. I'm just curious. The book Farming for Nature Handbook has become so popular. You must have received responses and reactions. Were there any that surprised you, or just were uplifting to read? New farmers or someone who might be new to the whole idea of farming for nature, of what they may have found in this book.
Yeah, so before the book was published, we wrote around to a few people for reviews, hoping, what if we got one or two, but we actually got really good response in terms of reviews from everyone from, I don't know, Mairead McGuinness to Tim Schmidt, who runs the Eden Project in England, to, there was lots and lots of people that gave us really good reviews, which also helped with the, when we were doing the PR of the book. But I think what was really nice is more the nice people taking the time to send us an email and saying how it's really transformed the way they think about their farm. They found the book really useful. We've had numerous emails from people saying how much they really appreciate the book because they didn't know where to start. So that's really nice. We also, even across the water in England, more recently, we got a book review in the RSPB blog, which goes out to about 40,000 people, and also in the British Wildlife magazine. And we even got a letter in the post the other day. It's a bit weird when you see a stamp saying Buckingham Palace. So it's nice to know that different, areas of society or whatever are finding the book and are engaging in it. So I think it will continue to kind of hopefully sell, and our aim for it over the next, so it sold 4,000 copies, and each one of those is just through our website because no distribution company would take us on. So but a lot of the independent bookshops have bought a few copies and they're selling. I mean, even someone like Charlie Burns, who bought, I think, copies to start with, has now sold 120 copies. So, they're kind of flying off the shelf a bit, but the hope is now in the next while to try and get them onto like Green Cert courses and course curriculums, because it's such a visual book that I think it would also be quite useful in a textbook style for people on reading lists and stuff
It's
like that.
work of art for anyone who hasn't seen it. The little sketches and illustrations are so beautiful that, even to look at, even to see the visuals, it's just fantastic. So a massive well done. I think there's one last question, is there? From Lelia Doolan. Fascinating and inspiring talk. Sean, who is behind the framed image behind Sean? Sean has suddenly disappeared.
Oh, Sean disappeared.
Oh yeah,
Oh, there he is.
Oh, is that
Chief Seattle. Chief Seattle, the earth is our brothers and sisters, and the rivers and the salmon, all our brothers and sisters. Yeah, I'm not doing it justice, but this is where it comes from. Is that okay?
That's
I
beautiful.
hope it is. Yeah.
And what a fitting finish to that talk.
Well observed.
Yeah.
And
we can see your inspiration and your motivation. It's so wonderful to have this time with you and have you answer the questions. So thank you, Sean,
Thank
so
you.
much, and thanks, Brigid. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
no
that.
worries.
Yeah.
Thanks to
Have a good
everyone joining
evening.
us.
Okay.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Bridget.
Pranjali.
Thanks, Pranjali. Bye bye.